to the Gaming Discourse. I'm Tyler Frater alongside Richard A. the Cruz.
Hello.
And Chief Engineer Lieutenant Commander Connor Frater, who is not here today. It is Monday, November 4th, 2024. Go to our YouTube channel, youtube.com/Gaming Discourse. Patreon.com/The Gaming Discourse. You can support us for $247, $10. Get your name in the video credits, early access to our videos, access to our Discord, and more. We've got lots of fun discussion, lots of fun news coming at you. We have a new Dragon Age game that came out.
Supposedly.
Have you? But you have not been playing it.
No, I have not.
Okay.
I barely have time for the games I got now.
I'm sorry. I have been. So I'll have some thoughts on that. What games have you been playing?
I have been playing a little game called Vampire Survivors because, of course, they released finally after 2 years they released a DLC featuring Castlevania. So it's an ode to Castlevania. Every single Castlevania character, at least main character, and then some other surprises that I didn't know were in the game until I think you presumably unlock everything. I've been playing that a lot. Just trying to unlock all the characters, all the weapons. And I think Castlevania has probably had the most crossovers in the last year. We had Dead Cells, Dead by Daylight, V Rising.
I didn't know Castlevania is in Dead by Daylight.
Yeah.
What characters?
A lot of them. Trevor, Alucard, Dracula. Dracula is the killer. Trevor Belmont, Simon Belmont, Selma Cruz. Leon Belmont, I think, is in there, and a couple others. I haven't seen the whole cast. I haven't seen the trailers, but I haven't.
Okay.
I haven't. It's one of those weird things because I'm such a fan that I'm like, oh, I got to pick that up, but it's I'm never play it.
Sure.
So it's it's only $7 though. So it's it's only $7. But a bad coffee is $7. Sometimes. So, and every single DLC that they've kind of come out with that's a crossover of those of any Castlevania game seems to be the people who perform it are very knowledgeable about the game, or at least they have chosen the correct boxes to tick when it comes to what details to put into to these characters. Because on Castlevania, or the Vampire Survivors DLC for Castlevania, a lot of the characters you choose will walk like their particular characters in those games, which is a very nice touch. It's because you have to get kind of that movement and speed correct. There are a lot of one particular character. Her name is Charlotte. She's from the Portrait of Ruin DS game. She can perform a stronger magic attack, but you have to hold the magic button, and a bar fills up at a certain speed, and when it reaches full, she'll release a bigger, more powerful version of that attack. If you don't move in Vampire Survivors, she'll start to charge that attack. So you get little things here and there of certain characters, which is really nice. Every Belmont character has a different type of whip that performs different moves, which is really unique. Sometimes not that great of a whip maneuver, but you can I can live with or without it. But they introduced one very, very large map of the outside area of Castlevania and inside of Dracula's castle. So you'll go through lots of different functions or lots of different styled areas. And they have, in Castlevania Symphony of the Night, starting with Symphony of the Night and every game after that, they have teleport rooms where if you go into that room, if you unlocked a room on the other side of the castle, you can go into one room and teleport to that side.
Okay.
So it makes progression faster. They have those in this game, and because the map is so big, you can, depending on which boss you hit, you can go to 5 different points. Bosses from all the Castlevania games are littered throughout the stage as you gotta stand.
So this is a pretty substantial DLC then.
Yeah. You gotta stand on their seal, and then the boss will pop up.
Oh, nice. You gotta summon them.
Yeah, you have to summon them and attack
Cool.
them. Some of them drop weapons. Most of them just drop a treasure box like usual, but some of them will drop actual things needed to progress the story, or not story, but the level, because levels are locked by the same type of doors that would indicate you're going into a new area in Castlevania. It's usually a red glowing door. So you can't go to certain areas unless you beat a certain boss. to get to that area. One of my favorite parts of the stage is there's a very notable boss that you fight in Symphony of the Night, the doppelganger. And you go into a room that has this seal in the middle, and it kind of like spins and opens up like a bunch of doors, and your doppelganger comes out. Before you get to that room, once you pass, there's lots of references, I'm sorry.
No, it's fine.
In Castlevania, when you also go through certain areas, it's a empty hallway with like a, designed, just like a designed structure that has a CD in the middle that lets you know it's going to load, like the next section. Well, they have that right before this room. And once you pass through that room, they hard lock your movement to only left and right, like a platformer. And if you press up, you do a little like stupid like high hop jump thing. So they lock you for this room to fight a doppelganger of yourself. And they'll have different moves from whatever weapons that you can get in Vampire Survivors. And that's a great reference. And I barely unlocked something now, or I barely unlocked a character, because every character you have to do something to unlock them. But other characters have, there's one character I really want to play as right now. You have to upgrade the hand grenade to max, but I don't know where the hand grenade is, and I don't know who has it. And I find out that one of the characters starts with it, but to get that character, you have to unlock other characters. So, so it's just a matter of doing all of that, and I'm having a blast through it. They not just that, but they remixed, I think, like 30 plus tracks from Castlevania.
Nice.
They're all very good, and there are some. Symphony of the Night is always the example I'm ever going to talk about or use, because that's the one that's put on the pedestal. But that soundtrack alone doesn't need any edits, and I think most people would agree. It doesn't need anything. Doesn't need remixes. Doesn't need anything. But they did do a couple of tracks from Symphony of the Night, and they're very, I'm going to use the word tasteful, but they don't mess with the structure of the song. It's still very familiar. It just adds to it. And
so they pass your test as an Uber fan.
Yeah, as somebody who enjoys that soundtrack, yeah, they definitely do. Well, to all the songs as well, because it's a soundtrack that I definitely can put on play and just have it loop. But it's a very, very substantial DLC. Like $4. It's always like all those DLCs are like $3-4, which is great. I've been playing that, and I also hopped over to Overwatch again because my wife started playing it because she wanted something to do. So today's the final day, but they were in the Halloween event, Junkenstein's thing again, and going into Overwatch after taking a break for, I think it's been a year now, maybe 2, because they're on like season 14. It's been a while. All characters are immediately unlocked. There's no more waiting for characters and no more buying them in the Battle Pass. The Battle Pass is still around, which, whatever. But it seems easier to progress in the Battle Pass than it did the first time, or when they first introduced it, which was something that was a big bummer for a lot of people. But they've added lots of little things. They haven't messed with the game in any substantial way. I know that they announced 6v6 is coming back, but there's lots of little things that kind of tickle that ADHD brain for those who play like Call of Duty or games of that ilk, and that's characters now have accolades that you can get. So if you play as a certain character more often than not, you'll level up the character. You don't get anything for it. You just get the little like badges, and the badges improve. So like if I go to somebody's profile, I can see how good they are with certain characters.
That's been an Overwatch for a while, hasn't it?
Not that I remember.
No, because I remember getting like experience with, or getting some kind of level with the characters that you played as the most. Maybe I'm thinking of it would just keep track of how much time you played.
Yeah, like they did have
because you could go to like players' dashboards and it would show you like a time bar.
Yes.
And then everybody, would have like 2 or 3 heroes that they played the majority of.
I guess it's now a flare.
Okay.
Instead of anything, because you'll play a match and it will the game will end, and then it'll show you a separate screen that's like, you played as like these characters. It has a huge bar, so you played as these characters. This was the amount of time you played as these characters, and then they each have individual levels of what you do with them, like how much healing. Like if I was Baptiste, how much healing you're doing. I have a bar for that. How much damage I'm doing, and I get like medals for those things. It's more flair than anything, but it's a nice. They're trying some different things, which is neat. But the one thing that I was very impressed by was the new mode that's in the Junkenstein event. And that's this mode that's kind of roguelike in a sense. There's a certain amount of characters from each of the pools, the assault, tank, and support, that they have chosen. I think it's 5 or 4 each one, and they have created mutations for them. So when you start the match, you choose two mutations for each of the characters. And so with Farah, I can choose to have 2 of the impact
the
grenades.
rockets.
Yeah, not the ones that push people away.
Oh, okay.
I can choose to have 2 of those, and then I can choose to, like, if I use my boosters or my like jump, I'll get 30% extra damage for like the next 3 seconds or something like that. And then of course when each round ends, you get rarer and more mutations. So by the end of it, people can have, like, Diva has this one that when you activate her ult, it sucks everybody in who's around instead of like them being able to run away. So you have to watch out for that. Diva has one, or not Diva, Farah has one that if you use that impact grenade, I forgot what it's actually called, but it pushes people away like 30% further. So people like shoot off. So the game can get kind of hectic, but it's really cool to see the stuff that people can do with particular type of characters. There are some that aren't really good in this mode. Like, I don't think Kiriko specifically, like she's
I don't even know who that
mode.
is.
She's the newest. Well, not the newest. No, she was the first new healer hero.
Okay.
At the launch of Overwatch 2.
I haven't played Overwatch 2, so
That's all right. It's okay. I know I'm kind of talking into the void here, but but she's a healer, but she can attack. But her attacks are because she only throws a kunai, and she throws like one at a time, and so it can't really do much. And her healing compared to like Moira or Mercy is not as good as you want it to be. Like in certain matches, why would I play one over the other? And Kiriko's also have a certain reputation of wanting to attack more than wanting to have that, because you have that precision of a kunai. It's kind of like a sniper shot. So although she does have a great buff with her ult. Anyways, I don't think she's that great in the mode. But like Ashe is really cool because when she throws her dynamite, if she shoots the dynamite, it'll explode. Not only explode, but that area where it landed will turn into lava.
Oh, okay.
So there's lots of really neat mutations, and it provides for like a really fun mode. But as fun as Overwatch is, again, going back to it after so long, it also still immediately you have the same issues. You have the same how people play compared to what class they are. So it's like, I had one of those matches where it's just like I'm support, and just the other team is just gunning for me, but nobody on my team is doing anything about it. So it's like, and then you get blamed for not healing, and it's like, well, if this Reaper wasn't on my ass, like, so. But that's why I usually just stick to like the fun modes. I don't ever really go into comp, But those are the 2 things I've been playing most. I'm really gonna try to. I know it's November and we only got 2 months left, but I'm really gonna try to blaze through a couple games here so I can like at least have something to talk about at the end of the year, because this was a real rough year for trying to get to some of those. I got to tell you, a
lot of stuff dropped in the past month and month and a half or whatever. So 2 months. Sure. Yeah, it's interesting. I wanted to. You talked about how many crossovers Castlevania has had, and Castlevania also hasn't had like an official game release
since I think 2012.
On Wikipedia, the last game it shows is Castlevania Lords of Shadow 2 in 2014.
2014, okay.
So it's been 10 years since like a Castlevania. There was the Haunted Castle Revisited came out this year.
Yeah, that was with
which
the
is a
collection, yeah.
Yeah, which is like not a remake, but whatever, a revisit.
I would say it's a remake.
Is it a remake?
I would say it's a remake, yeah. Which
but it's like it's weird to have a series that has so much crossover and has 2 animes.
Yeah.
And has no new games,
Yeah.
and I don't know. And Castlevania is not a series where it's going to have a $300 million budget. It's like nah, it doesn't. I mean, it doesn't need anything that like massive. I mean, and I don't know. Maybe with Konami's like they kind of woke up from that 10 years where they were like, hey, let's just do pachinko machines, and now they're like, all right, we'll do Silent Hill and fucking Metal Gear, I guess. Maybe they'll eventually be like, oh, we've got this other property, Castlevania. Why don't we do some shit with it? You know.
I hope so. Yeah, you got to talk to Mega Man fans too, because they're in the same boat. Mega Man gets a lot of crossovers, but nothing to show for it. But yeah, Castlevania, I think always walks a fine line because you have the formula for lots of really cool stuff, but they've only ever been able to nail it with the Metroidvania aspect of it, the side scroller 2D stuff. They've never been able to make a really good Castlevania 3D game. And there's been some good ones, but nothing like, incredible that people can point at. And the only one really was, in my opinion, this is just from my experience being in the fandom and gaming industry, was Lords of Shadow. But even then, we've talked about it before, Castlevania fans don't believe that's a real Castlevania. So, But if you ask Castlevania games or Castlevania fans, what was the last one? Curse of Darkness on the Xbox and PS2 was like the last really good one. So I don't know what they should do. I would love to see another game. If I don't get one, I have lots of really cool crossovers, and I have all of the really good past games that I can keep playing.
I need to emulate. I mean, I need to go purchase legally a copy of Symphony of the Night, because I need to finally play some of these games.
It's on sale on PlayStation like for $2 every other week.
Okay, maybe I should just do that. Does it run well on
yes,
PS5?
It runs very well.
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay, maybe I'll do that then, because that'll be a fun. I assume Symphony of the Night isn't super long.
No, you can get through the full game in like 8 hours probably.
Okay, that'd be a fun. That'd be a fun
a fun little romp.
Yeah, in between gigantic games. So I finished Silent Hill 2 a couple weeks ago. I don't know, time is a flat circle. And then I started Dragon Age Veilguard a couple days ago. I am not somebody who is an expert on the Dragon Age series. I played Origins off and on through the years, never finished it, never returned to it. I didn't play Dragon Age 2. I think Connor is a member of like the Dragon Age 2 cult fandom.
Okay.
So I know Dragon Age 2 has a reputation of being like the bad one, but a lot of people, especially in retrospect, have come to respect it and thought it did some cool things, and it kind of has like a cult following. And it's also a game that had to be made in like 14 or 15 months or something insane for different reasons. So BioWare had the deck stacked against them. I loved Dragon Age Inquisition. It was one of my favorite games. I only played through it once, but it was one of those things where I played through it once and I was like, that's perfect. Maybe I'll play it again in 10 years. So Veilguard I was excited for. I'll say off the top, it's definitely different. The art direction is not as cartoony as it appeared in that trailer, but it is not the same art direction that we saw in Inquisition or in like Dragon Age Origins. It's not totally Blizzard, but it's definitely it wouldn't shock you if Blizzard made a game that looked like it. It does have a little like exaggeration and cartooniness to it, but not to the point where I would describe it as cartoony. It's kind of difficult to judge.
Does it have that thing to where like the characters aren't like really textured? They're kind of like smooth.
I don't think so.
No,
I don't think so.
I haven't seen the game running in motion much, so
I don't think so. I mean, I think the game looks fine.
Yeah. So like Overwatch. The characters don't have like a ton of detail to them, but they have that like toy figurine, like to where they're kind of smooth. Like the hair is not like detailed, but it's like smooth.
I'd have to look at it again.
Okay.
I'm gonna say no.
Okay.
But I might be wrong, because now that I think about it, I'm really not sure.
Okay.
The game is obviously it's third person, so a lot of the stuff when you get close zoom up, like I think a lot of the conversations and a lot of the cutscenes, it seems like they play out in real time. They're not pre-rendered. So a lot of like the textures when you get like a conversation with somebody, the texture is a texture that's meant to be seen in third person, so you can kind of see that. It's the same thing with like Dark Souls or whatever. It's like when you get really close up to the castle wall, it doesn't look as good as it does. Which all games are like that, but especially games where it's third person, because the camera is going to be further away from your point of view. So
somebody made that. Somebody was like, "Oh yeah, in Black Ops 6, this like tree foot, like that looks like really shitty." And it's kind of like, well, how do you play Black Ops? Because like I don't know anybody who like just you're zooming in Black Ops, like in Call of Duty, you're going on like who has time to look at that? Nobody get like that's not a thing you should care about.
I think but with Veilguard, I think the art direction is fine. I prefer Inquisitions. Because I think Inquisitions is a little more distinct. Origins is a lot more grounded. So, but Dragon Age is a crazy series where like every single game is completely different almost. The gameplay is Mass Effect, but it's melee combat Mass Effect. So you can't control your allies like you could in Inquisition. You can't give them orders like move orders or anything like that. They kind of just follow you around, and then in combat they do their own thing, but they have abilities. And so there's a screen, you hold R1 on the PS5, and they have different abilities, like they can slow down time and force enemies to move slowly, or there's a mage you get early on that's a frost mage, and she can freeze enemies with a spell or whatever. So whenever those cooldowns end, you just pull up that screen, you target an enemy, you tell one of your companions to cast a spell or whatever, and they do that. Or you cast one of your spells or do one of your abilities. So it's really reminiscent of Mass Effect. That is a departure from Inquisition, because Inquisition was closer to Baldur's Gate, where you could customize the AI of your party and have them like cast certain spells right off the bat.
Right.
But a lot of the spells thus far seem to be offensive based, not necessarily like I haven't seen a spell that gives offensive based or like boosts or something, buffs. I haven't seen a spell that gives you like a shield or something from a mage or anything. There's spells that can heal you. There's different, I think every class, or maybe just scout. There's only 3 classes in the game: mage, scout, and it's like a fighter, warrior, whatever. But the mage and the scout both have an ability where they toss a health item at you and it can heal you. So that would be a health. But anyway, so the way combat works is all of these spells, many of them chain together. So like one of my spells is a drop kick, and it detonates something called weakened, right? Weakened is a condition. So the drop kick doesn't apply weakened, but if the enemy is weakened, then I detonate them for extra damage.
Okay.
So there is a mage that has a spell that applies weakened. So what I do is I have the mage cast that spell, and then a second after they cast that spell, I do my drop kick and I detonate for extra damage, right? So it's not the first time in the world that spells chain off each other, but there's a lot of different like damage types that chain with other spells. So you're always, usually when you're casting a spell, you're trying to think about, I'm going to cast this person's spell and this person's spell, and then you only have 2 companions with you, and then a few moments later it's like, okay, now it's time to cast my spell, but I need them to cast this so I can detonate them. So you're not just thinking about your own spells, you're thinking about how to combine them with your squad mates, which is fun and active. And of course the combat looks great because when you pause it in that split second, everyone's doing something awesome. So it's like you will, if I do, like when I do my drop kick, but right before I do the drop kick ability, I will say, okay, cast the spell. And what the AI will do is if the AI is somewhere far away, they will like teleport over real quick just to cast the spell.
Okay.
So it's neat because I'll order that spell, and then after, when I pause the next time, they are like in midair attacking the enemy right before.
That's really cool.
So you get a lot of cool like sights like that. Just like with Inquisition, there's tons of colors on the screen. Red for different types of damage, blue for frost damage, and everything is exploding, and it's very chaotic. But combat thus far is my favorite part of the game. Turn the difficulty up. I think it gets better. It was not very difficult. I was going through it standard, wasn't super difficult, and I turned that difficulty up and it got instantly better. Combat takes longer because enemies are way more resistant. But I just feel like it has more weight. It has more, you're dodging a lot, at least I am. So it's a third-person action game in a lot of ways because you're dodging with circle. You can if you have a shield, you can parry enemy attacks if you time it right, and that stuns them for a second. So and combat definitely feels like there's lots of different little folds to it. Every class has 3 subclasses. Like for the warrior, I don't remember if they're called the warrior, but whatever.
Sure.
There's a shield-based one. There's one that does necrotic damage, and then there's one that dual wields weapons, right? And as you spec your class, you kind of have to spec the skill tree goes out in 3 directions for each subclass.
Okay.
So if you want to go to, like, I'm going toward the dual wielding weapons, which is down. So I kind of have to pick abilities going down to eventually unlock that subclass.
What's that? Kind of like that graphs, like the type of graphs that.
Yeah, and again, that's something you see in a lot of games. Sure. But I think it's well done thus far. So I think the combat's good. The writing, I've seen people complain about the writing here and there for different reasons.
Yeah.
I definitely see some of that. Dragon Age is a really dense game. It has a ton of lore. It has lots of dense politics. There's racism in the universe. There's there's politics with the mages, and there's prejudice against different countries and stuff like that. So there's lots of density there, and the writing thus far doesn't reflect a lot of that. The world feels a lot more happy and sort of friction. I mean, there's still bad stuff, but it doesn't feel like there's much friction.
Yeah.
I remember playing as an elf in Inquisition, and it would be brought up, hey, you're an elf. Like, don't you face racism all the time or whatever? I'm playing as an elf in Veilguard, and it's like not a problem, which is fine, but it's just weird where a game made the world so dense and so reactive like that doesn't seem to matter as much. Some of the dialogue is pretty bad. I recorded one scene because I was stunned by how bad it was. There's a character that gets an ability to raise rocks. So as you're running around maps, I'll explain that in a second. As you're running around maps, you'll see a rock. And it's like, if you jump onto that rock, you can jump up to a ledge. But the rock is on the ground. What do? You tell your companion to lift the rock up, and they lift it from the ground, and now you can climb on top of it. So anyway, there's a quest where that person is they get this ability and they're practicing it, and you have to go to a rock, and it's a tutorial. And she's like, okay, I'm going to try and lift this rock. And you can pick okay, do your best, whatever.
Yeah.
And she tries to lift it, and she fails, and the camera sort of pans to her, and she just goes, awkward.
Oh, man.
And I was like, oh. I was like, that was bad. That's a bad piece of writing right there. I was like, you couldn't think of anything more to give the character other than a literal joke from a Key and Peele sketch.
Yeah,
So I recorded that because I was like, that is some atrocious writing. Which I don't know. I don't want to be mean here, but it's just write something else other than awkward. It's just not that feels like a really, I hate to say it because it's an oversimplification, but it definitely feels like a Marvel thing or a type of writing that is it's all about everybody being fun and everyone being kind of silly, and there's no serious character dynamics or anything. Now that's not to say that Veilguard is totally like that. As I have met other characters and as I've played through the game, some of the dialogue is good, some of the storytelling is good. But yeah, there are just those really bad moments of writing where it's like, oh my God, like, could you not? It feels like there were things written that were first draft that were never ran through and changed.
Right.
And we know that this game has been in development hell for 10 years. So there's got to be stuff in this game that has just been affected by its history. Like, there just has to be. It would surprise me if everything is, if there are zero impacts on Veilguard right now from its troubled history over the past decade or so, right? Because Anthem affected this game.
Yeah,
it was rebooted. It was going to be live service, so there was a bunch of shit that happened to it. So it's like sometimes it makes me think, like, I wonder if they just had to write some scenes really quickly, and they just sort of the first idea they had, and that became dialogue, and they just didn't have the time to go back and rewrite some of the dialogue. Yeah, so that I understand people's resistance and their disappointment when it comes to that kind of thing. But yeah, so far it's more positive. The beginning hour is very clunky because they have to fit in so much lore. Because you have to remember who Solus is, and then you have to know why Solus is a bad guy, and then you have to remember what the Inquisition was, because this is also sort of a follow-up to Inquisition, even though the Inquisition, you're not a part of it in this game.
Right.
So it's like they have to do a bunch of catch-up, and then you have to introduce your character and introduce what you're doing with your character and introduce the city that you're in. So there's a bunch of stuff that they have to pick you up to speed on at the beginning. And it does not, at the beginning, it's definitely a little rocky, but as it slows down and as you get into now it's an RPG, it does get a lot better, especially as you start collecting companions and you go on their quests. And, but yeah, at the beginning, a lot happens, and it definitely takes a little bit of time until you're like settled in and you're like, okay, I'm good. It definitely took me, there was a period where I was like, I don't know if I'm going to enjoy this. And then it settled down and I was like, okay, and now I'm enjoying it a lot. But yeah, you were about to say something?
Yeah, I was going to say something about the scene with the picking up the rock. And I feel like just hearing about that sequence from someone on the outside, I feel like that immediately would be a scene used for this particular character. I don't know any of the characters in Veilguard, but it sounds like that should have been used as a scene to leave the door open to that character's like insecurities or reasons why they can't do that. Like,
yeah, but it's
because that's base level. Like,
yes, I know what you're saying. Like if you're writing that scene, that's a placeholder. Yes. You're like, what are we gonna have her say here? Yeah. I don't know, but we need something for the script. Okay, just put awkward, whatever. Yeah. Then you move on, and it's like, but in the writer's head, it's like, why can't I do it? Like some more meaty line about like.
I mean, it could have just been like, damn it. Oh, don't worry, you could get it next time. Or
literally
something.
anything else would have been better than awkward. Literally anything else, because that was rough. But I'm trying to think of what else. Yeah. Oh, there's a lot of weird camera angles and a lot of weird transitions. So I recorded a scene where the camera cuts like a bunch of times, and then two characters speak. The characters are getting out of a boat. They're docking at a dock, and they're getting out of a rowboat. So it's introducing the town that you're getting to, and the camera showing the town. The camera is also showing the people talking in the boat. And as the people get out of the boat, you and your companions, people are getting out and walking out of the boat, but people are talking. So it's really awkward because people's faces get covered as they're talking. Mm-hmm. It's just a really strange scene that just sort of jolted me. I was like, oh God, that was not comfortable. There was something else that I had thought of, but it's escaping me now. I was saying, a lot of the transitions can be kind of jarring, because, so there are like, I was going to say how the game is structured. So It is similar to Mass Effect, where it's like you have a town. The town is linear, but it has a bunch of different paths you can unlock to go do side quests and stuff, and you can run around and explore that. So it's not like open world like the hinterlands were in Dragon Age Inquisition.
Yeah.
It's not really like that. There are a few areas that are open, but it's closer to something like Mass Effect or even parts of God of War, where you have sort of a linear level that you can eventually go back to, unlock different pathways, do side quests, that kind of thing. I think it works great. But the game has trouble figuring out how to like transition, and I think they kind of just brute forced it, because there are levels that you do where they are disconnected from the worlds that you can explore. So it's like, okay, how are we going to get the characters here? And a lot of times it fades to black and then it opens and you're just at the beginning of a level and you're not really sure how your characters got there. It's kind of strange. There's one part where you have to get to a building that's underwater. So you go out onto a lake with a character and the character is going to open up a passage somehow to this underwater building, right? So the character starts like a whirlpool and you see the whirlpool begin and then it fades to black and it opens and you're already underwater in the building.
Okay.
So it like doesn't explain. It's like, did the whirlpool open and you just jumped in? Was there like stairs? Was there a door?
Right.
Like you're not sure. And that transition is just like quick jolt of like incoherence.
Yeah.
Between scenes. It's not that big of a deal, but there's a bunch of little tiny things like that make it kind of awkward and strange.
Yeah.
I don't know why it's like that. The gameplay's great. As soon as you're in that underwater building and you get going, it's great.
It's good, yeah,
it's just awkward. So I think people are detecting that. And again, that feels like something where they just didn't have time, because this game's been in development hell. I'm speculating, but it feels like it's been in development hell forever. It's been rebooted, whatever. And so it's just like they had to get it done. So we're like, you know what? We're just going to smash cut here. The player is going to enter here. It's going to be a little jarring, but that's fine, because 5 minutes later they'll be having fun fighting enemies and they won't remember it. So I think, I think that's pretty much a well-rounded assessment of my experience thus far. But the important takeaway is that I cannot wait to get back and play it more. So
good.
So that's like the big big takeaway is I'm enjoying it enough that it's not like I'm already like, I'll play 10 more hours. No, it's like
right.
I'm really excited. I have like 3 more companions to find. I do find the story interesting. I'd find the companion stories interesting. The character leveling, I can't wait to dig into my character and like figure out how to build them a little bit more. And unlock, and you can, and just like your companions have smaller skill trees, but they also have skill trees that you can build out and whatever. Mm-hmm. They're just not as big as yours. You can upgrade your equipment. You find new equipment. There's transmogs. You can change the appearance of your character. You can also change the appearance, like physical appearance of your character almost right off the bat. You get your initial screen. There's a mirror in the game that you can, there's like a hub area, just like in, like the Normandy in Mass Effect or the castle in Inquisition, where it's like you hang out before you go to do your missions or whatever. Yeah. And there's a mirror you can go to. You can change so it's like, it's all very accommodating. It has lots of the same ticks that RPGs have had, and it's all fine. So yeah, big takeaway. I'm excited for it, but there's definitely some some awkwardness to it that I don't blame people for pointing out at all. Did you look like you were gonna?
Sorry, I was because the way you're kind of talking about like those cuts, I was just sitting here like, well, I wonder who directed it, and I checked the 2 directors that Wikipedia gives me. I know that's not like the best source, but it looks like one of the directors, it's their first time directing something this big, possibly.
Wow. Okay.
I don't know, because I need to log into LinkedIn, and I don't want to do that right now. So I just but their resume
Yeah, and BioWare lost a lot of
lost talent,
veterancy off of after BioWare.
Yeah.
I mean, after Anthem, notably Mark Dara.
Sure.
Mike Laidlaw, who wrote the Dragon Age games, I think, was one of the head writers.
Yeah.
Maybe not. I don't remember now. Maybe it was Mass Effect. I don't remember. But anyway, so that could be it. Yeah, I don't know. Before we move on to the news, I did want to say that Haunted Castle's box art is maybe the greatest box art of all time.
Very old school.
Because it has a dude in like a Halloween costume.
Yep, that's how Simon looks. Yeah.
Halloween costume. I'm talking about the Halloween costume like Dracula.
Oh, yeah.
And he's
yes,
he's in a graveyard, and there's like a hot babe who's like hiding from him.
You're right. Yeah, the original arcade. That's the arcade.
Is she release. A character from the game?
So because Haunted Castle is a retelling of the original Castlevania. Okay, and they took some liberties with the story.
Apparently.
And so the right when you start the game, the first cutscene is Simon Belmont and his presumed wife walking away from the church after getting married, and then Dracula just like appears and like takes her and then leaves.
Awesome. That's why she's wearing white.
That's why she's wearing white. Yeah.
The skimpiest wedding dress of all time. But I don't judge. People get married however you want. That's fine.
For sure.
Yeah,
but cool. That was a really good remake. The first game is awful. It is a very, very rough arcade game. But yeah, the remake is really good.
Okay, we'll hit the ad and we'll talk news. Thanks for listening. If you like our content, please consider subscribing or leaving a like and comment. You can find us at patreon.com/thegamingdiscourse. And our tiers are $2, $4, $7, and $10 and include getting your name in the video credits, early access, and access to our Discord server. Okay, so PlayStation has shut down Firewalk. Firewalk Studios, I believe, is the full name.
Yes.
And Neon Koi. Firewalk Studios, obviously, they were the team behind Concord. Neon Koi, I believe, was the first mobile team that Sony acquired for their big mobile push. This was announced by Herman Holst in an email to employees. I'm just going to read a couple paragraphs here, and then we'll get into the discussion. Expanding beyond PlayStation devices and crafting engaging online experiences alongside our single-player games are key focal areas for us as we evolve our revenue streams. We need to be strategic, though, in bringing our games to new platforms and recognize when our games fall short of meeting player expectations. While mobile remains a priority growth area for the studio business, we are in a very early stage of our mobile efforts. To achieve success in this area, we need to concentrate on titles that are in line with PlayStation Studios' pedigree and have the potential to reach more players globally. Regarding Firewalk, certain aspects of Concord were exceptional, but others did not land with enough players, and as a result, we took the game offline. After much thought, we have determined the best path forward is to permanently sunset the game and close the studio. I want to thank all of Firewalk for their craftsmanship, creative spirit, and dedication. The PvP first-person shooter genre is a competitive space that's continuously evolving, and unfortunately, we did not hit our targets with this title. We will take the lessons learned from Concord and continue to advance our live service capabilities to deliver further growth in this area. However, growing through sustainable financials, especially in a challenging economic environment, is critical. Okay, so there's a lot to discuss here. We've already talked a little bit about a little bit about Concord, so I think we're going to be rehashing some things we've already said. Mm-hmm. But I am curious, reactions, and if there's anything else if you've thought more about the Concord shutdown or whatever the past few weeks.
I haven't thought more about it. I just kind of think that when they did shut down Concord, there were a group of people, and myself included. I reserved a space in my head with the confidence that they could try something new to get Concord back. They could have relaunched it as well. I'm not them, so I can't say this would have worked, but they could have tried relaunching it as a free-to-play title. They could have relaunched it as a PlayStation Plus title, as one of the monthly giveaways that they usually do, and then see if maybe the revenue from the possible players, new players that they get would have sustained it just a little bit longer. But maybe whatever they chose is the best pathway for that. But I don't like the focus that Herman Holst had in the first line that he gives, ending with the need to evolve the revenue streams. Because I understand you want to make money by making these video games, but I feel like putting that line in there, and of course this is an assumption on my part, just kind of begs the feeling that like you are just looking for that next revenue stream and nothing else, which of course is what you want when you create a live service type of game. Like you are doing it not for creating a good game, but creating that consistent retention of money and residual money coming in. And I feel like that's kind of a disappointment statement to say, but it's the inconvenient truth for a lot of devs out there. If you're not going to make us the money, then you're out of here.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't have PlayStation's financials in front of me, but I find it hard to believe that the only option for Firewalk was just to close the studio.
Yeah.
That feels like it just feels like similar to what Xbox did with Tango and Arcane Austin. It just feels like something where there has to be other options other than just completely shutting down the studios, regardless of how much money, Was Concord, did it have a $400 million budget? I have no idea. That's been reported. That would be insane if it did. But it's like, are you telling me that there's nothing else you can do at PlayStation? The only option is for you to shut down this studio. That's hard for me to believe, especially when it's like, did you try everything you could with Concord, like take it free to play or whatever, which are not things I necessarily like, but just from a business standpoint, are there other things you could have tried?
If it could delay or remedy the closure of a studio and the release of plenty of, I assume talented developers, then I would want them to do that.
Then they should try that.
And I know it would cost more money, but when we first saw Concord, not me specifically, it wasn't my jam. Like already the initial cutscene or the initial trailer they released in the State of Play, didn't really grab me. But for a lot of people or a lot of impressions that I saw online, there was the angle that people were excited that there was a possibility of a Guardians of the Galaxy-esque type first-person shooter. And of course, when we saw that it was a PvP game that we have already plenty of, that's where the disappointment set in. So if you already had these characters, you already had these voices, you already had the presumed story that you were going to create every other week, why not just try to pivot that into actual single player story-based game?
Yeah, something.
Because yes, it would take more work to create new levels, to create enemies possibly, but you have a large majority of framework, I would assume, that's there. And once again, not a game developer, I can't just say you can do that, but
it's a better option than firing everybody.
Better option than firing. Yeah, and especially since Herman Holst 2 years ago when they started making the game, and he talked about it, or there was a tweet he talked about, it was like a year and a half ago or 2 years ago. He said how good the game was. Apparently, he was very vocal about how good the game was. People who've played it said that it is a solid first-person shooter. It's just everything else around it was not up to snuff. Like, it definitely sounds like Firewalk was at least fairly talented. Why not have them make a new Resistance? Why not have them make a new Killzone? Why not have them resurrect something that...
Or remake... Yeah, I mean, yeah. That's...
Right, there's
all kinds of options.
All kinds of options.
Yeah, and I know, again, I don't know.
Armchair developing.
We're armchair developing here, but at the same time, it's just like we're armchair developing from the standpoint of, can you do anything but fire people? Fire more people in a time when so many people are being fired, and it just feels like there has to be. I think it's important to point out that I feel like I want to know how PlayStation got here. Like who made the decisions that you were going to make a PvP hero shooter that sort of diverts from your strengths, and who made those decisions? And is it only Firewalk's fault? Because I feel like it's not. And why were those decisions made? And what lessons should be learned from making clearly bad decisions? You know, I think those are questions that maybe Herman Holst and PlayStation executives should be asking themselves. Because I don't know, you know, if you told, I don't think this endeavor was a good idea to begin with. It's just, you know, for a lot of different reasons. It's PvP games are in a certain market that you know, it's not like PvP games are in a certain market where you have to be engaged with it to be able to play it a lot. You're already talking about with Overwatch 2. It's like you're hopped in and it's tough to play the sort of quote unquote normal modes because unless you commit to it and unless you decide to work with randos, it's just not going to be fun. Yeah. So you'd rather do the alternate modes, right? So it's just like that's an atmosphere that a PvP game has to lend itself to, is finding an audience that's going to commit to playing it all the time. And it's a live service game, which means you're going to be dedicating that to, you know, figuring out the live service aspect of it. And, you know, that market's already saturated enough. Or single player games have finite lifespans. You make them, you release them, maybe you do some updates or whatever, maybe you do a DLC, but people play them and they move on. And those people that move on are ready to buy another video game. I don't know. You know, so I don't know. I guess that's just a long-winded way of me saying, I just feel like this just wasn't a good business decision regarding, or wasn't a good business decision when you take into account why PlayStation has dominated the PS4 era and thus far is dominating the PS5 era. And the reason that they're dominating is because of their first party IPs. Yeah. That's why. Xbox definitely helped at the beginning. But if Last of Us and if a bunch of other games had never released, PlayStation would not have had the momentum that it had going across the PS4 time, right? Yeah. The PS4 era. The momentum it got was because every year or every other year you had Horizon, then you had Ghost of Tsushima, then you had God of War, then you had Uncharted, whatever, right? And that propelled PlayStation into this, like, I don't know, this sort of HBO of video games. You know, the great way to put it. I don't like the term prestige games. I hate it. I hate it to death. But I think if there's a grain of truth to it, it is PlayStation released there was like a period, if you ignore Days Gone, or it's like every game it released from a first party IP was a Game of the Year contender. Yeah. For like 10 years, right? And that's what gave it the momentum. And that's much more difficult to do with multiplayer games because it's a different market. It's saturated. People engage with it in a different way. And the only reason you do that is because, you know, well, Overwatch makes a ton of money, so why can't we just do that? And that's not I don't know, is that a way we really want to approach business and game development? I don't know. It just feels like it's not.
Especially when the dangers of the loss and returns like is in play for games. Like you have a much higher chance of releasing a game and not getting your returns back than you do creating a successful game and getting lots of returns. And it all comes down to what you said already, just the market being saturated. As we were talking about this, I just kind of realized that, like, yeah, we also are on the topic of like them shutting down the Last of Us multiplayer game, which they could have,
which is a bit of a different case in my mind because they had because the first one had the popular,
and I understand, but you know, they could have once again pivoted, put their chips into that because Last of Us 2 did come out 2018? No. 2019?
One of those 2 years. I don't remember.
Anyways, and so you had X amount of time to create that multiplayer experience that we already knew was coming at that time. Yeah. But on top of that, and this is kind of like, I don't want to say the no-brainer, but you bought Bungie for Destiny. So you already have a free-to-play shooter, which, in my opinion, has an excellent multiplayer, like several multiplayer modes, and is the next closest thing to Halo feeling wise. But you have the the ball and chain proverbially of like the story of like having to do all the MMO stuff before you can have fun in the multiplayer. But if you dissect it, move it aside, hey, here's Destiny's multiplayer, you can get everything here, whatever, no bells and whistles, or all bells and whistles, or whatever. Then they could have did that, but they focused on Concord, and it very disastrously did not pay off.
Yeah, PlayStation's, we know that they're pushing, trying to figure out how to get into the mobile space. That doesn't excite me, because it's not just, again, it's just not their strength, and it's not a market that I think is a great market for video games. It's a great market where games make money, but I just don't think it's a great market for good video games, worthwhile or meaningful gaming. Just doesn't take place a whole lot in the mobile market because it's not about those things. It's just about monetization. Yeah. And I think maybe one of the distinctions we can make about the Last of Us multiplayer game was the Last of Us multiplayer game obviously has a cult following, or cult fandom. Mm-hmm. And it had some cool ideas and stuff. And it was kind of, from what I remember playing, it was actually one of those multiplayer games that felt like a horror game, kind of.
Sure. I think so.
But it had elements that were live servicey, but it came out before the live service gigantic push, right? Yeah,
it did.
So I think there's a distinction between figuring out how to do like multiplayer gaming and live service gaming. Like there's got to be a distinction there, right? Because I think you can make multiplayer modes or whatever, or co-op modes, or multiplayer games or co-op games, that you can have that. But there's like, at some point, there's a difference between that and live service, where now it's all about the monetization, it's all about the retention, it's all about the getting the whales, and that is your entire business strategy behind this one specific product, is finding that. And that I dislike. And I think that's what it was with Concord, and that's what it is with their mobile push, and it's whatever else that they're doing. And yeah, I don't know. I think what PlayStation should do is focus on their strengths, first party IPs. And then Herman Hulst says, okay, Tyler, well, games are going to cost $500 million in 2 years. So how do you expect us to pay for that? And I'm going to say, well, Herman, figure out how to make games not cost that much, whether it's making them shorter or making them smaller, or you say at some point we're just going to tap out on the graphic fidelity, and we're going to say, you know what, we're not going to make our games look a million times better because they were great looking on the PS4, and we're just going to stick with that, and we'll plateau that for a while. I don't know. I don't know the industry like as well as Herman Hulst.
Yeah.
But it's like there's got to be other solutions than just trend chasing and looking for like to hope that you find an audience of 1,000 people that will play a game for 100 hours a week and sink their disposable income into it. But yeah, I don't know. It's too bad because PlayStation had so much momentum heading into PS5. COVID was not its fault. Nobody's fault. So, well, except for a bat. No, except for some guy that died on a bat somewhere. No, it was nobody's fault. And a bunch of weird stuff has happened since then. But it just, this feels like watching a football game sometimes where like both teams just keep fumbling the ball and no one's really knowing how to score, and it's really annoying because Xbox is in a great position, but they keep on doing stupid shit. And Nintendo is just in the stands, like eating hot dogs and having a good time because they're fine. They're perfectly fine. But PlayStation is the same thing. They had so much momentum. COVID wasn't their fault. But it's like all of this stuff, the mobile push, I think their complete lack of interest in doing anything with PSVR 2, which I think is a huge disappointment, is like, why not? I don't know. Why not get Firewalk to make a PSVR 2 game? I don't know. Like, okay, again, I know that's easier said than done. You can't just tell a studio to do something and, they up and move. And like, obviously I'm being tongue in cheek here, but there just has to be other options for a business that's not just totally fumbling ideas for live services all over the place until hopefully one hits because 1,000 whales happen to find it fun. And you're like, oh, we're business geniuses all of a sudden, I don't know. To me, that's not the kind of industry I want. So
I'd agree, and it does suck because when we get on this concept of like mobile gaming for PlayStation, it's really weird that they want to push this now, because to me that they're like 12, 13 years way too late on it.
Yes.
And granted, like there's a couple things I could think they could do with mobile games that would be really cute, but it's just so weird that like in the year of our Lord 2024, like they want to start focusing on that when like Nintendo did it. Nintendo of all people did mobile stuff like back in like 2016.
Yeah.
They
kind of fiddled with it.
They fiddled with it. They backed out, but they still have one game going that's making them a healthy amount of revenue, and that's what they've decided to stick with. But
I think Nintendo's an interesting example, because having one hit on mobile, I don't think is PlayStation's goal, or Xbox's goal. For that matter. Of course not.
But also like in that instance, Microsoft, yes, obviously bought King to do like mobile stuff, but they've been doing mobile stuff for years. Like they haven't caught a hit, but they've had mobile either integration or just mobile games that they've done. They haven't been like huge hits, but they've been things that I've like enjoyed. There's like, fun word puzzle games and stuff like that, but it seems like they're at a crossroads, Sony, and they want to be a jack of all trades, a master of none, and that'll be their downfall.
So I would hope, I don't know, I refocus on what you do well and rehire all the people from Firewalk and put them on a game because they're talented and they can do it, and just don't trend chase and don't make something that's super generic. And I don't know, there's got to be other solutions out there. And it's interesting. Why Nintendo? I would be curious to figure out, because Nintendo's a publicly traded company, right? Mm-hmm. So they have shareholders, right?
I think so.
Saudi Arabia.
Oh yeah, that's right.
Has like a 7% share. So there's one shareholder. But like Nintendo, I don't know. They don't have games that are like packed full of. Well, I mean, I'm sure they have games with microtransactions, but not in the same way that like Xbox and PlayStation have. They don't have that same kind of push towards live service. Mm-mm. I don't know. Nintendo, but again, maybe their games are cheaper, their consoles are cheaper, so their economics are different. They have a bigger market in Japan. Xbox doesn't have that. PlayStation, I don't think PlayStation does. You'd probably know better than I, but I always assumed PlayStation does fine in Japan, but not as good as like Nintendo.
They do fine. They used to do really good, and that was when they had Monster Hunter exclusivity.
Okay,
and they don't anymore. That was before, because their Monster Hunter exclusivity was on PSP, and that helped the PSP to be a massive success in Japan. And then they lost it, and it went to the 3DS, Nintendo 3DS, and of course 3DS skyrocketed. And but they do well, because PlayStation is the home of Japanese games, JRPGs particularly,
Final Fantasy,
and other,
which it was an exclusive for a long time.
Yes, and other niche titles. But yeah,
it's weird to think about that. It's weird to think about that at one time Final Fantasy was a console exclusive.
Yeah, I mean,
like a long time ago.
It was a Nintendo console exclusive, then it was PlayStation,
and then I think Final Fantasy. What was the one with Lightning?
It was Final Fantasy 13.
That was the first game that came to Xbox, right? The first Final Fantasy.
Yes.
You're laughing
because of course the Blu-ray disc is like 25 gigs, 30 gigs, and with how good it looks, there were jokes online, and people would like mock images of like PS3 on one disc, and it's like Xbox 360 on like 10 discs for like ended up being 3, but whatever.
Gotcha. Okay. Okay, let's we're already at an hour here. Let's just make fun of Ubisoft real quick. So Ubisoft released an NFT game called, this is the worst game name like of all time.
Sure.
Tactics Champions Grimoria Chronicles.
Okay.
Whatever. One character, if I understand this correctly, if you go to their marketplace, so it's like a game with, tabletop looking characters and they fight each other. I think it's maybe similar to Axie Infinity because you can like build them and stuff.
Chess game.
So yeah, I don't know. And obviously it's an NFT game, so you have to have a wallet, a crypto wallet. So it's big giant scam essentially. But so if you go on their marketplace on Tactics Champions Grim Warrior Chronicles marketplace, it shows you like the heroes that you can buy and how much they're worth in cryptocurrency, and then how that what's that called when you transfer money for another currency? Conversion, right? The conversion rate or whatever for the currency. This morning I saw one champion that was $128,849,018.85.
Nice.
So for a couple Alan Wakes, no, for one Alan Wake, you can buy no, Alan Wake 2 is probably way more expensive than that. But almost for a half a Concord, they could have bought this character from Champions Tactics, whatever. Meanwhile, Brian Francis at Game Developer wrote a story I want to dig into just a little bit here about Phoenix Labs and Rumble Games. Phoenix Labs made Fae Farm and another game I don't remember. Both studios, Phoenix Labs and Rumble Games, were secretly purchased by Fort Labs, a blockchain game platform. 5 former workers told Game Developer that they were barred from revealing the news of the purchase to anyone outside the company. A former Rumble Games employee also said that they and their colleagues had been sworn to secrecy over Fort Labs' purchase. Francis points out that nothing about the purchase seems illegal or untoward. A Fort Labs PR spokesperson told a Game Developer that this was not a rule and implemented. There was nothing about secrecy when the companies were purchased, but obviously the employees dispute that. Rumble Games was working on an NFT game, but was shut down in July. Phoenix Labs suffered layoffs in May and had an upcoming game canceled. I'm going to read a little bit from the story here. Quote, Phoenix Labs and Rumble Games were in different positions regarding how fast they were supposed to be implementing blockchain technology in their games. Developers at Rumble were working on a fully functional blockchain marketplace that would let players buy and sell in-game items listed using cryptocurrency. A former senior Phoenix Labs developer told us Fort solicited pitches from the studio on how to use blockchain technology in its games, but that it was never prescriptive with its approach. This individual said they weren't bothered by downplaying the ownership, saying they believed Phoenix Labs would not do itself any favors by acknowledging being owned by a crypto-affiliated company. Despite the freer hand, there was still nervousness about any efforts to use blockchain in Phoenix Labs' existing games. Fae Farm and the planned early access game operating under the title Project Dragon were both conceived as being partly aimed at younger audiences, and employees were uncomfortable with hawking digital items with speculative value to children and teenagers. And of course, a bunch of libertarians who have crypto wallets went, I don't see the problem here. Right. Are they mentally mature enough? If so, what's the problem? All right, I don't know if we have too much to say about this. That story I just thought was interesting.
That is a very interesting, weird story.
because you got, it's like, why would you keep it a secret if you bought these companies? Why wouldn't you want your employees to sell? And my initial thought was, well, it's because you don't want to know, the company that bought you doesn't want people to know that they are in blockchain technology, because nobody except for like 12 dudes that spend too much time on the internet are into blockchain technology. And so that's why, and then in the story, people speculate that it is because Fort Labs knows nobody likes blockchain technology. Right. And so if you go out of your way and say, hey, Phoenix Labs was purchased by a blockchain company, it's just going to get negative press, which is correct. Yes. For multiple reasons.
It's also weird because it just simply says they were sworn to secrecy. Like, they didn't say they signed an NDA or anything.
In the story, they talk about having to sign an NDA when they were laid off, but the NDA did not include the thing about not saying your company was bought out by Fort Labs. So apparently this was like a verbal thing where they were like, hey, you can't say that Of course, there's no like legal binding to this.
No, of course not.
It's just intimidating your employees, I guess.
Right. That's why I'm like kind of weird that like.
Which is why the story is so strange.
Yeah.
It's a really good piece of journalism. I'll put it in the description.
It's also, I was getting ready for this story, and I found this actually a couple days ago. I ended up liking it. This was on actually this is yesterday. But someone on Twitter said, I tried playing the Ubisoft NFT game. The entire game has been unplayable since Friday. Allegedly, a malicious player has found a way to win every single match before the game even begins. Also, he is somehow the only person anyone ever matches against.
Nice.
So in the Discord of the game, the mods say that it's something that the dev team will look at on Monday, which is today. So no one even is like going to be dealing with it.
Okay.
So it just shows how much they
maybe care. It's that guy that owns the $128 million.
Oh, maybe.
You know, his little miniature is, which it's too bad because if you watch the gameplay looks kind of cool because the minis like fight, and when one of the minis loses, like all the pieces break apart because you know how you glue minis together.
Yeah, so it's like the Star Wars chess I've always wanted.
So it's like, you know, I don't know if there's any game out there like that, but it's like the minis like clash, and then like the mini that dies, like its arms and torso fall apart, like they're little minis. I was like, oh, that's a fun little neat anime. Too bad it's in service of some complete bullshit. Why does Ubisoft like? I don't know. It's probably because this game has been in the works for a while, but it is hilarious that that they sort of stealth released it because obviously all it's going to get is bad press, except for again 12 guys that are on the internet too much, and that's all it got, and that's all it deserves because we're past NFTs. The market's dead. Nobody's buying them anytime soon.
No one cares.
And so it's all about AI now. That's what all these guys got to hop on somewhere somehow because who gives a shit about NFTs anymore? I don't know. Again, Yves Guillemot should be fired, and Ubisoft should find a new way forward. And it's too bad because you know, I thought about this when I was playing Splinter Cell. I played Splinter Cell Conviction. I made a video about it a couple months ago.
I've heard.
And it's weird to think that like Ubisoft was at one point cutting edge. Like, think about it. Splinter Cell Conviction was the first game I can remember where you had like tagging enemies and that kind of thing, you know?
And it's gone now. You can't do I don't know any games that do that nowadays.
Well, I mean, but think about like it's evolved. So every Far Cry game now you can tag enemies and then it stays
like
with
pinging them. Yeah.
Yeah, you can like ping. But I think like Conviction was the first game to do it.
Yeah.
And the games like sort of built from there. Splinter Cell Blacklist was basically Metal Gear Solid 5 before Metal Gear Solid 5. Far Cry 3 like did a lot for the open world. Assassin's Creed, the first one, was really innovative. So like, and I'm sure there's other games that I'm spacing on.
Yeah, no, still to this day though, that open world formula is used very frequently, like from Ubisoft.
So from like 2007 to like 2012, Ubisoft was really innovative and coming up with really cool ways to make games and do things. And maybe there's still a little bit of that around today, like their crazy ideas for Watch Dogs Legion or whatever.
Yeah.
But it just doesn't coalesce, and everything is just sort of generic and standard, you know? So I don't know. I just a thought about Ubisoft. But Ubisoft has the IP to get awesome, to do new things, to do great things. They just have to
just like
do it.
Just like EA and just like formerly Activision, well maybe still them, you know. It's chasing trends and chasing short-term lots of money right now instead of thinking about, you know, what people play games for in the first place is to have fun. By and large, at least I like to believe that.
Yeah, but that's the thing about NFT games. That's not why people play NFT games.
No, it's not. Yeah.
You play NFT games because they're speculative assets.
Yes.
Right? Playing NFT games is just a few pixels and an engine away from playing the stock market. Like it's almost the exact same thing. Mm-hmm. It's just with more terminology and more annoying bros, but instead of the bros being like bros in fucking sweater vests, they're bros in like basketball shorts and a Twitch stream. It's basically different. But anyway, so that's the scary thing about like NFT games. People don't play them for fun. They play them as a job. And this, if you look up like Axie Infinity, which I don't even know if Axie Infinity is still around anymore, if the company went under or whatever. But like Axie Infinity is an example of it became literally people's jobs to play that game, to like get the characters, to get to get the cryptocurrency, so they could exchange that for like USD, and that's how they would make a living or whatever. And that got really bad and really exploitative. But anyway, do we have tidbits?
I do have some tidbits.
Yay, let me find the sound. Where? Here it is.
Nice.
What if I told you, in this world, there are bits, and there are tids, and Richard is the only man who can put them together into tidbits. We need Connor back. No, you don't, Tyler. You're good, Tyler.
You're great, Tyler.
Oh, thanks. Yeah. Now that I pointed it out.
I'm going to move on to tidbits. I got 4 of them today. I'll try to make it a little quick, but it is official. After 6 months, the Nintendo 3DS network is now officially dead. Fish Guy 6564 was the last remaining Mario Kart 7 player on the Nintendo network. He just stayed in a lobby, or stayed in a game that was running ad infinitum, and their 2DS crashed while playing. So I disconnected them from the network, so it is fully done. No one will ever get on it again. We'll see.
Have you ever watched any of the videos of the people that were like the last guys on Xbox Live playing Halo or whatever? Those things are sad, but
well, if you mod your Xbox, you can just get right back on it. So
not everybody can do that, Richard.
I know, but
not everybody's a super hacker like you are.
I've had a couple guys come in already who's like super excited. They're like, "Can I get a headset?" Because I'm online again. And I'm like, "All right, cool, man." Like you and the 20 other guys. It's really cool, but it
is pretty niche.
Yeah. I love this one. One lucky owner has found themselves in possession of what appears to be a fully demade version of Zelda Breath of the Wild. This was posted on GBA Temp. This user ordered a flash cartridge from AliExpress only to find that a demake of the game for the 3DS is in the list of available games. So there's videos of it online and everything, but it's extremely rudimentary, like 3D, like open world Zelda.
Weird.
It's very, very funny to look at.
Okay.
I love it. I'll show.
Why would that be a thing?
Because people want to fuck around with shit, like, because you can,
Sure, yeah.
A lot of people, like, there's a guy.
Does Nintendo know? Is Nintendo sending?
They probably
did
do
they
now.
launch a Patriot missile for this man's house yet?
Yeah. They will.
Did they petition the Japanese military to have a submarine?
I hear rumors there are talks.
Have a submarine launch a missile off the coast of California and get this guy somewhere. I don't think Japan has submarines because they don't have a military, whatever. Not neither here nor there.
But I love what people like. Sometimes it's silly. Like, why would you do that? But other times it's really interesting. Of course, there's getting Doom to run on everything, but that's a classic.
Oh, yeah, sure.
But I know that there's, of course, tonight's Castlevania night, I guess. But there's a guy who's fully porting Symphony of the Night to the Genesis.
That's awesome.
And there's videos online. He's doing a damn good job. It actually
looks awesome.
It looks really good and plays fairly well. It looks like so.
That's awesome. Okay.
This is not much of a tidbit, but just something that I think is great. I love when creators of things can comment on like remakes and stuff. But the original creator of Resident Evil 4, Shinji Mikami, has praised the Resident Evil 4 remake. He said, quote, "I thought that it was really well made. Another thing I thought was really well done was the way they took the half-assed scenario that I just wrote up in 2 weeks and really built up on that and really fleshed it out. They showed a good understanding of the backbone of each character, and they took not just the scenario itself, but even the dialogue, and they improved all of that stuff. So it was really great." So
I'll say this, going through Resident Evil 4, it definitely seems like something someone may have written in 2 weeks.
Oh, yeah.
He's at a village, and then there's a giant fish, and then he's at a castle, and then there's bugs.
Yep.
It's what makes it an all-time classic.
Nothing needs to make sense as long as it's entertaining.
Yeah, exactly. And then there's a giant, and another one, and then back to the castle, and the castle has demons.
And there's a small guy, and his hand comes off.
Yeah, exactly, yeah.
I'm going to mention it again. It's tonight's Castlevania night, so this is the last tidbit I got. But renowned all-female Japanese theater troupe Takarazuka, Review will be performing an official and original Castlevania musical in 2025 titled Castlevania Awakening Under Moonlight.
Oh.
That's it.
Will that be something that is viewable online?
It will be eventually. All of their stuff eventually gets viewed through, like, because, you know, it's those types of performances are for Japanese, Japan made. So usually people have to wait till the Blu-ray comes out, and then they'll buy the Blu-ray, and then they'll translate it and then put it online and stuff. They have like all the Sailor Moon ones. They got lots of other performances. They're really.
This IP is like Star Wars right now, except we just have no new games, which is weird.
And I don't know what I want them to do as far as that, but you know, whatever they do, I'll buy it.
With how remakes are going, I think the obvious thing is remake Symphony of the Night, right?
Oh yeah, I mean because
how about remaster it? I'm sure there's been like HDs or whatever.
Yeah, there's been HD. Well, maybe like there's been HDs, but it's just the resolution to fix to
maybe
HD.
like a remaster. How about that? Where it's like I don't know.
That'd be interesting because it's like
not a remake, quote unquote, but
we've done stuff like like Streets of Rage 4. Streets of Rage 4, all hand drawn, all animated. Like that would be cool. But, you know, just like Resident Evil 4, just like Silent Hill 2, just like those games were and are at a certain point considered perfect. Mm-hmm. And they were remade to critical acclaim, you know, but they didn't fudge with those things very much. So, like I'm very hopeful and very sure that Metal Gear Solid Delta will be one of those as well.
Yeah.
Whenever that releases.
Yeah. It's not releasing this year.
It's still slated for this year.
I just don't see... If that releases this year, that would just be weird.
Yeah.
It would just be weird to suddenly have a Metal Gear Solid 3 remake that's like, oh, by the way, it's coming out in December. It's like, what the hell?
I feel like they'd shadow drop it.
They would shadow drop it. Wow, that'd be intense. YouTube.com/Gaming Discourse, Patreon.com/The Gaming Discourse. We will see you next week. Bye-bye.